What is it?
Yeah.
What does it mean to you now to look over on stage and still see Roger there playing with you this many years later?
Love him. I love looking at him, and we look at each other, and we're singing these songs. And when we do the Byrds, we do a few Byrds songs, but I'm on the other side of the stage at that point playing bass because I swap with Chris Scruggs on the bass. But when I'm singing next to him on other stuff, it's wonderful. We get along fantastically, and always have. We always worked well together, and we were good friends throughout the whole Byrds experience. And but it's great to look over and see him and sing, and it's a wonderful thing.
Do you ever? Do you?
I wish it wouldn't end. I mean, in a sense, I would safely say we might be doing something later, a different something together, or with Marty and the band. I don't know. See, things happen, you know.
Do you think that this celebration of this album is kind of a victory lap, or kind of like a bow on a lot of maybe even restlessness from the past, or?
Well, I do think that's a good term, a victory lap in a sense. But I see it. You got to remember, Roger and I, and everybody in the Byrds didn't stay with that necessarily. I mean, even Mike Clarke, the drummer, went on and became a member of Firefall and did quite well for that kind of music. And Gene, of course, was very successful in a sense. But Roger continued on, and then, of course, Gene and Roger and I worked together in the 70s. And Roger, back to his true love, was folk music, and that's what he does now.
Yeah.
Other than this tour, but I did all these other things. So the Byrds remain probably the top of the list. I mean, but he asked. It's funny. We were out on the road one night and this tour, and he said, "How many bands have you been in?" I said, "I think about 8." I said, "I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing." I said, "Either I was the mediator, or I just was supposed to do that until I got to a point where I was leading and doing the rest of that stuff." Yeah.
Well, now that you're 73, what's your perspective on life? What if you ever do look over your shoulder? What do you see at the path to here and now?
Well, I'll tell you, Garrett, I don't ever look over my shoulder, and I used to, like we all do. And you go, "Well, I wish if only I'd have." Well, there's plenty of things. There's a list of things. If only I'd have spent more time on doing this or that or this, and then you go, "Well, that didn't happen," and I'm still here, and I don't know what will happen. I mean, I was retired a year and a half, 2 years ago. I was really ready to retire, and then Tom gets hold of me, and I had no intention of making another record, but that was a beautiful time together. And then after Tom passed, and then within a month and a half, my house was in this huge fire, and then I get the call from Roger about this idea, and I hadn't really talked to Roger for quite a while. But and he really was responsible for putting this all together.
Yeah.
And he might have, if you've spoken to him, I don't know, but he thought that it would be a good thing to do, and it was the 50th anniversary coming up, and that he said and he talked to Marty. He said let's do something, get Chris going. He's had a tough year, and Roger knew that I was upset about Tom because Roger and Tom were so close. And the day Tom passed away, I was in Nashville. I said, "We're going home." I said, "We're canceling the next 4 shows." I was so upset. And Roger called me. I don't know, out of the blue, he just called me. He said, "Do not do this. Tom would not like it if you canceled shows." He said, "You go out and celebrate him." And it was true wisdom. And I did. And I said, "We're not going home." And we went out and we finished the tour and all of the above. But it's been an interesting couple of years, I'll tell you.
What sticks
I don't know.
Well, what do you remember most about Tom? I mean, I know you guys are very close, but now that you've had some time to maybe reflect on your time together.
I find him to be one of the most an unsung genius. I mean, his songs were so accessible to the world, and I think he was greatly mourned when he passed away. I can't get that. Hang on, I don't want to lose you again, because I'll let it go. one thing I did, as I said earlier, he loved music and any kind of music, and it was so funny when we started this record. I said, well, he said, well, play me some of your songs, and so I wasn't even prepared to do that, and he says, oh, okay, so it's a folk album. I said, I don't know what it's going to be, Tom. I said, I don't know what we're doing here. No, that's cool. And the funny thing, he was a very funny man. He said, well, what do we have to work with, money, budget-wise? I said, $30,000. He went, that's a challenge. I thought that was the funniest thing, because I said, it's doable. He says, yeah, we'll make it happen. We'll use my studio, and I'll work something out with the engineer and blah blah blah. But he was just such a joy, and he of course, I was always going, oh God, I wonder if he likes this stuff. He's just being polite. But I thought, well, if he didn't like what we were doing, he would have probably come up to me and said, my manager called me, and I'm going to have to let Herb Peterson finish the project because I got to do something. And that never happened. And then the last conversation I had with Tom was, I said, man, I appreciate this so much that you did this, and it's just a perfect way to end my recording. He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, I don't know if I'll ever make another record. He says, what are you talking about? I'm not done with you yet. And I thought that was just exactly what I needed to hear. Meaning, that he continued doing other stuff, or he would have been the guy that would have put Crosby and McGuinn and I in the studio together, because he was the mediator, and he knew all of us very well. He knew Roger the best, but that remains to be seen, and that's not going to happen at this point. But it was a big loss.
Well,
the guy, he's such I'll just finish with it. He had such an amazing catalog of music, and as I said, he was accessible the way he wrote his songs, his melodies, and he was honest. He was totally honest with what he did, and he loved what he did. And for a man to keep the same band together for over 40 years, and the crew, speaks a lot about who he was.
Well, that quote you said of his, that he wasn't done with you, it's almost like when you apply it to where you are right now with this tour, it's like that's the voice of the cosmos telling you that it's not done with you yet.
Yeah, and at the end of the show every night, we do a little tribute to Tom, and Roger had written a song with Tom called The King of the Hill, and I do Wildflowers, and Marty does a acoustic version of Running Down a Dream that'll blow you away. It's so good.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's mandolin and acoustic guitar and stand-up bass, and it's so good. It just cooks. So.
Well, my final question is, you've spent your life performing and creating music and traveling the world and interacting with all walks of life, on stage and off. What does it taught you about what it means to be a human being?
It's a true gift. I don't know. I mean, I look at things, of course, as I've gotten older. I think the greatest blessing I've ever had in my life is to have children that were successful, that I have a granddaughter and I have a grandson on his way from my daughter's having another baby. That, when we sat down at Thanksgiving and we're all together, and I went, oh my God, and my son's getting married, those things are what really matter. But I had a wonderful, wonderful career. If it stops in 5 minutes, I had a great career. I wasn't Bruce Springsteen or Mick Jagger, and that's okay. I like to play music. I could have, there were a lot of guys out there that were a lot better than I ever was. I was just at the right place at the right time, and got to do something I really loved. And that part of it all is there. To be a human being is to learn compassion and respect and humility. The hardest virtue for any of us to grab hold of is humility, is to be humble enough to say you're sorry or you are there for somebody. And basically, Garrett, I'm politically not correct. And that's not even a part of the human being experience. But as I've gone through the years, I've become a lot more conservative in my views and all of the above, traditional things. So. But it's truly a blessing, and every day, for the bad cliche, every day's a blessing. Take it for what you got, and there's days when it just isn't great, and there's days when it's wonderful.
Well, it's like the golden rule is the golden rule for a reason, right?
Right, exactly. I think another thing that's quite interesting about this tour, we all share a common faith in Christ, and not to the point of proselytizing on a stage or doing anything, but there's a real, and not to be an elitist, but there's a real respect and love amongst all of us that I didn't really ever get in any other band. There was always some